Good evening. Time for dinner. We're on 1 Kings chapter 4. And it came to be that sovereign Shalomo was sovereign over all Yisrael. And these were his chief officials: Azariah, son of Sadok the priest, Elihoreph and Ahiah, sons of Shisha, scribes, Yehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, the recorder, and Benayahu, son of Jehoiada, over the army, and Sadok and Abiathar the priests, and Azariah, son of Nathan, over the officers, Zabud, son of Nathan, a priest, friend of the sovereign, and Ahishar, over the household, and Adoniram, son of Abda, over the compulsory labor. And Shalomo had 12 governors over all Yisrael, who provided food for the sovereign and his households. Each one made provisions for 1 new moon of the year. And these were their names: Ben-Hur, in the mountains of Ephraim, Ben-Deker, in Makatz, and Sha'albim, and Beth-Shemesh, and Elon Beth-Hanan, Ben-Hesed, and Aruboth, Succoth, and all the land of Hepher were his. Ben-Abinadab, and all the height of Dor. Taphath, the daughter of Shalomo, became his wife. Baana, son of Ahilud, in Ta'anak, and Megiddo, and all Beth-Shean, which is beside Sarathon, below Yisrael. From Beth-Shean to Abel Meholah, as far as the other side of Yokneam, Ben-Geber, in Ramoth Gilad, the towns of Yair, sons of Menasheh, in Gilad, were his. The portion of Argob in Bashan, 60 large cities with walls and bronze gate bars were his. Abinadab, son of Iddo, in Ma'anayim, Ahimaat in Naphtali. He also took Basemath, the daughter of Shalomo, as wife. Baana, son of Hushai, in Asher, and in Eloth. Yehoshaphat, son of Paruvah, in Yissaskar. Shimi, son of Elah, in Binyamin. Geber, son of Uri, in the land of Gilad, in the land of Sihon, sovereign of the Amorites, and of Og, sovereign of Bashan, and 1 governor was in the land. Yehuda and Yisrael were as numerous as the sand of the sea, eating and drinking and rejoicing. And Shalomo was ruling over all the rains of the river to the land of the Philistines, as far as the border of Mizraim. They did task work and served Shalomo all the days of his life. And Shalomo's food supply for 1 day was 30 cors of fine flour and 60 cors of meal, 10 fatted cattle and 20 cattle from the pastures, and 100 sheep, besides deer and gazelles and roebucks and fatted fowl. For he was ruling over all this side of the river, from Tipsah even to Azah, over all the sovereigns on this side of the river. And he had peace on all sides round him. And Yehuda and Yisrael dwelt safely, each man under his vine and his fig tree, from Dan as far as Beersheba, all the days of Shalomo. And Shalomo had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots, and 12,000 horsemen. And these governors, each one in his new moon, provided food for sovereign Shalomo, and for all who came to the table of sovereign Shalomo. There was no lack in their supply. They also brought barley and straw to the appointed place, for the horses and steeds, each one according to his right ruling. And Elohim gave Shalomo exceeding great wisdom and understanding and largeness of heart like the sand on the seashore. And Shalomo's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the men of the east and all the wisdom of Mizraim. For he was wiser than all men, than Ethan the Ezrahite, and Heman, and Calcol, and Darda, the sons of Mahol. All his name was in all the nations round about. And he spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. And he spoke of trees, from the cedar tree of Lebanon even to the hyssop that springs out of the wall. And he spoke of beasts, and of birds, and of creeping creatures, and of fish. And there came from all people, from all the sovereigns of the earth, who had heard of his wisdom, to hear the wisdom of Shalomo. And Hiram, sovereign of Sor, sent his servants to Shalomo, because he heard that they had anointed him sovereign in place of his father. For Hiram had always loved David. And Shalomo sent to Hiram, saying, You know my father David was unable to build a house for the name of Jehovah his Elohim, because of the battles which were all around him, until Jehovah put them under the soles of his feet. But now Jehovah my Elohim has given me rest all around. There is neither adversary nor evil incident. And see, I intended to build a house for the name of Jehovah my Elohim, as Jehovah spoke to my father David, saying, Your son, whom I set on your throne, in your place, he does build the house for my name. And now, command that they cut down cedars for me from Lebanon, and let my servants be with your servants, and let me pay you wages for your servants, according to whatever you say. For you know there is none among us who knows to cut timber like the Sidonians. And it came to be when Hiram heard the words of Shalomo, that he rejoiced greatly and said, Blessed be Jehovah this day, for he has given David a wise son over this great people. And Hiram sent to Shalomo, saying, I have heard that which you sent me. Let me do all you desire concerning the cedar and cypress logs. Let my servants bring them down from Lebanon to the sea. Then I put them in rafts by sea to the place you direct me, and I shall spread them out there. Then you take them up, while you do my desire by giving food for my household. And Hiram gave Shalomo cedar and cypress logs, all his desire. And Shalomo gave Hiram 20,000 cores of wheat as food for his household, and 20 cores of pressed oil. Thus Shalomo gave to Hiram year by year. And Jehovah gave Shalomo wisdom, as he promised him. And there was peace between Hiram and Shalomo, and the two of them made a covenant. And sovereign Shalomo raised up compulsory labor out of all Yisrael, and the compulsory labor was 30,000 men. And he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 per new moons by courses. They were 1 new moon in Lebanon, 2 new moons at home. And Adoniram was over the compulsory labor. And Shalomo had 70,000 bearing burdens, and 80,000 hewing stones in the mountains, besides 3,300 from the chiefs of Shalomo's deputies, who were over the work, those ruling over the people who labored in the work. And the sovereign commanded, and they brought large stones, precious stones, to lay the foundation of the house with hewn stones. And Shalomo's builders and Hiram's builders and the men of Gabal did hew and prepared timber and stone to build the house. And it came to be in the 480th year after the children of Israel had come out of the land of Mizraim, in the 4th year of the reign of Shalomo over Israel, in the new moon of Ziv, which is the 2nd new moon, which he began to build the house of Jehovah. And the house which sovereign Shalomo built for Jehovah was 60 cubits long and 20 wide and 30 cubits high. And the porch at the front of the hekal of the house was 20 cubits long, according to the breadth of the house, and its width 10 cubits from the front of the house. And he made for the house windows with narrowed frames. And against the wall of the house he built rooms all around, against the walls of the house, all around the hekal and the speaking place. Thus he made side rooms all around. The lowest side room was 5 cubits wide, and the middle one was 6 cubits wide, and the third was 7 cubits wide. For he made narrow ledges around the outside of the house, so as not to lay hold on the walls of the house. And the house, when it was being built, was built with finished stone made ready beforehand, so that no hammer or chisel or any iron tool was heard in the house while it was being built. The doorway for the middle side room was on the right side of the house, and they went up by stairs to the middle side rooms, and from the middle to the third. So he built the house and completed it, and he paneled the house with beams and boards of cedar. And he built the side rooms of the structure against all the house, each 5 cubits high, and they were fastened to the house with cedar beams. And the word of Jehovah came to Shlomo, saying, This house which you are building, if you walk in my laws and do my right rulings, and shall guard all my commands and walk in them, then I shall confirm my word with you, which I spoke to your father David, and shall dwell in the midst of the children of Israel, and not forsake my people Israel. So Shlomo built the house and completed it. And he built the walls of the house inside with cedar boards. From the floor of the house to the ceiling he paneled them on the inside with wood, and covered the floor of the house with planks of cypress. And he built 20 cubits at the rear of the house, from floor to the walls with cedar boards. And he built it inside as the speaking place, as the most set apart place. And the house was 40 cubits, it is the hekal before it. And the cedar for the house inside was carved with ornaments and open flowers. All was cedar, not a stone was seen. And he prepared the speaking place in the midst of the house, to place the ark of the covenant of Jehovah there. And the front of the speaking place was 20 cubits long, and 20 cubits wide, and 20 cubits high. And he overlaid it with refined gold, and overlaid the slaughter place of cedar. And Shlomo overlaid the inside of the house with refined gold, and made gold chains pass over the front of the speaking place, and overlaid it with gold. Thus he overlaid the entire house with gold, until the entire house was completed, and the entire slaughter place that was by the speaking place he overlaid with gold. And inside the speaking place he made 2 cherubim of olive wood 10 cubits high. And one wing of the cherub was 5 cubits, and the other wing of the cherub 5 cubits, 10 cubits from the tip of one wing to the tip of the other. And the other cherub was 10 cubits. Both cherubim were of the same size and shape. The height of one cherub was 10 cubits, so was the other cherub. And he placed the cherubim in the midst of the inner house, and they stretched out the wings of the cherubim, so that the wing of one touched one wall, and the wing of the other cherub touched the other wall, and their wings touched each other in the middle of the room. And he overlaid the cherubim with gold, and he carved all the walls of the house all around, both inside and outside, with carved figures of cherubim, and palm trees and open flowers. And he overlaid the floor of the house with gold inside and outside. And for the entrance of the speaking place he made doors of olive wood, the lintel doorpost a 5th. And the 2 doors were of olive wood, and he carved on them figures of cherubim and palm trees and open flowers, and overlaid them with gold. And he spread the gold on the cherubim and on the palm trees. And so he made doorposts for the door of the hekal of olive wood, a fourth part. And the 2 doors were of cypress wood, the 2 leaves of one folded, and 2 leaves of the other door folded. And he carved cherubim and palm trees and open flowers, and overlaid them with gold laid smoothly on the carved work. And he built the inner courtyard with 3 rows of hewn stone and a row of cedar beams. In the 4th year, the foundation of the house of Jehovah was laid in the month of Ziv. And in the 11th year, in the month Bul, the 8th new moon, the house was completed in all its matters, in according to all its plans. Thus he built it for 7 years. Interesting. And Shlomo built his own house for 13 years and completed his entire house. And he built the house of the forest of Lebanon. It was 100 cubits long and 50 cubits wide and 30 cubits high, with 4 rows of cedar columns and cedar beams on the columns. And it was paneled with cedar above the beams that were on 45 columns, 15 to a row. And there were windows with narrowed frames in 3 rows. The window was opposite window 3 times. And all the doorways and doorposts had square frames, and window was opposite window 3 times. And he made the porch of the columns 50 cubits long, 30 cubits wide. And the porch was in front of them, and the columns of the roof was in front of them. And he made a hall for the throne, the hall of right ruling, when he ruled. And it was paneled with cedar from floor to floor. And the house where he was to dwell, in the other courtyard, within the hall, was of like workmanship. And Shlomo made a house like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had taken. All these were of precious stone, hewn to size, sawed with a saw, inside and out, from the foundation to the coping, and also on the outside to the great courtyard. And the foundation was of precious stone, large stones, stones of 10 cubits and stones of 8 cubits. And above were precious stones, hewn to size, and cedar wood. So the great courtyard all around had 3 rows of hewn stone and a row of cedar beams, as was the inner courtyard of the house of Jehovah and the porch of the house. And sovereign Shlomo sent and brought Huram from Sor. He was the son of a widow from the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Sor, a bronze worker. And he was filled with wisdom and understanding and skill in working with all kinds of bronze work. So he came to sovereign Shlomo and did all his work. And he cast 2 columns of bronze, each one 18 cubits high, and a line of 12 cubits measured the circumference of each. And he made 2 capitals of cast bronze to put on the tops of the columns. The height of one capital was 5 cubits, and the height of the other capital was 5 cubits. A lattice network with wreaths of chain work for the capitals which were on top of the columns, 7 chains for one capital and 7 for the other capital. And he made the columns and 2 rows of pomegranates above the network all around to cover the capitals that were on top. And so he did for the other capital. And the capitals that were on top of the columns in the hall were in the shape of lilies, 4 cubits. And there were capitals above also the 2 columns by the bulge which was next to the network. And the pomegranates were 200 in rows on each of the capitals all around. And he set up the columns by the porch of the hekal. And he set up the column on the right and called its name Yakin. And he set up the column on the left and called its name Boaz. And on the top of the columns was lily work. Thus the work of the columns was completed. And he made the sea of cast metal, 10 cubits from one rim to the other, round all about, and 5 cubits high, and a line of 30 cubits measured around it. And below its rim were ornaments all around, 10 to a cubit, and all the way around the sea. The ornaments were cast in 2 rows when it was cast. It stood on 12 oxen, 3 facing north, 3 facing west, 3 facing south, and 3 facing east. And the sea was set upon them, and all their back parts were inward. And it was a handbreadth thick, and its rim was shaped like the rim of a cup, like a lily blossom. It held 2,000 baths. And he made 10 stands of bronze. Each stand was 4 cubits long and 4 cubits wide and 3 cubits high. And this is how the stands were made. They had side panels, and the side panels were between frames. And on the side panels that were between the frames were lions, oxen, and cherubim, and a pedestal above on the frame. Below the lions and oxen were wreaths of beaten work. And each stand had 4 bronze wheels and axles of bronze, and its 4 feet had supports. Under the basin were cast supports beside each wreath. And its opening inside the crown at the top was 1 cubit. And the opening was round like the work of the pedestal, 1.5 cubits. And also on the opening were engravings. But the side panels were square, not round. And the 4 wheels were under the side panels, and the axles of the wheels were joined to the stand. And the height of a wheel was 1.5 cubits. And the wheels were made like chariot wheels. Their axle pins and their rims and their spokes and their hubs were all cast. And there were 4 supports at the 4 corners of each stand, and its supports were of the stand itself. And on the top of the stand, 1/2 cubit in height, round all around. And on the top of the stand, its flanges and its side panels were of the same. And on the plates of its flanges and on its side panels he engraved cherubim, lions, and palm trees, according to the clear space on which, with wreaths all around. He made the 10 stands like this. All of them were of 1 mold, 1 measure, and 1 shape. And he made 10 basins of bronze. Each basin contained 40 baths. Each basin was 4 cubits, 1 basin on each of the 10 stands. And he put 5 stands on the right side of the house and 5 on the left side of the house. And he put the sea on the right side of the house to the east, facing the south. And Hiram made the pots and the shovels and the bowls. And Hiram completed doing all the work that he was to do for sovereign Shlomo on the house of Yehovah. The 2 columns and the bowl-shaped capitals that were on top of the columns, and the 2 networks covering the 2 bowl-shaped capitals which were on top of the columns, and the 400 pomegranates from the 2 networks, 2 rows of pomegranates for each network to cover the 2 bowl-shaped capitals that were on top of the columns, and the 10 stands, and the 10 basins on the stands, and the 1 sea and 12 oxen under the sea, and the pots and the shovels and the bowls. And all these utensils which Hiram made for sovereign Shlomo for the house of Yehovah were polished bronze. The sovereign had them cast in clay in the district of Yarden between Succoth and Sarethan. And Shlomo left all the utensils unweighed, because they were many, nor was the weight of the bronze searched out. So Shlomo made all the utensils for the house of Yehovah. the slaughter place of gold, and the table of gold on which was the showbread, and the lampstands of refined gold, 5 on the right side and 5 on the left, in front of the speaking place. And the flowers of the lamps, and the snuffers of gold, and the basins and the snuffers, and the bowls and the ladles, and the fire holders of refined gold, and the hinges of gold, both for the doors of the inner house, the most set apart place, and for the doors of the house of the Hekal. Thus all the work which sovereign Shlomo had done for the house of Jehovah was completed, and Shlomo brought in the set apart items of his father David, the silver and the gold and the utensils, and he put them in the treasuries of the house of Jehovah.